In a groundbreaking diplomatic move that could reshape West African politics, Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada has become the first ECOWAS leader to visit a member of the breakaway Sahelian Alliance of states. Today, we'll explore this historic visit to Burkina Faso and what it means for regional stability, diplomatic relations, and the future of West African integration. On Tuesday, President Bio, who assumed the chairmanship of the Economic Community of West African States in June, met with Burkina Faso's military leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, at the presidential palace in Koulouba. This wasn't just a routine diplomatic visit. It represents a potential turning point in one of West Africa's most significant political crises. To understand the significance of this meeting, we need to step back and examine the series of events that led to this moment. The Sahel region has been in political turmoil since 2020, with military coups occurring in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Captain Ibrahim Traoré came to power in Burkina Faso through a military coup in September 2022, overthrowing the transitional government of Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, who had himself seized power earlier that year. This made Burkina Faso the epicenter of political instability in the region. The coups weren't happening in a vacuum. These countries have been battling severe security challenges, with jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS conducting regular attacks, displacing millions of people, and overwhelming national armies. The military leaders justified their actions by claiming civilian governments had failed to address these security crises. ECOWAS, established in 1975 to promote economic integration and cooperation, found itself facing its biggest crisis. The organization imposed severe sanctions on the coup-led governments, including economic blockades, asset freezes, and diplomatic isolation. These measures were designed to pressure the military leaders to restore civilian rule. The pressure from ECOWAS had an unintended consequence. Instead of returning to civilian rule, the three military-led governments of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger began coordinating their responses. In September 2023, they signed a mutual defense pact, and by January 2024, they had formally withdrawn from ECOWAS entirely. The Alliance of Sahel States, or AES, was born from this defiance. The three countries, covering a combined area larger than the entirety of Western Europe and home to over 72 million people, decided they would chart their own course. They cited ECOWAS's failure to help them address security challenges and accused the organization of being influenced by external powers, particularly France. This wasn't just a political statement, it was an economic earthquake. These three countries control significant natural resources, including gold mines in Mali and Burkina Faso and uranium deposits in Niger that supply much of France's nuclear energy needs. Their departure threatened to fragment the regional economy and undermine decades of integration efforts. The withdrawal also created practical challenges. Trade routes that had operated freely for decades suddenly faced potential barriers. Citizens who had enjoyed freedom of movement within ECOWAS found their status uncertain. The economic implications rippled throughout the region. When Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada assumed the rotating chairmanship of ECOWAS in June 2024, he inherited this fractured landscape. Bio, a former military officer himself who later became a democratic leader, brought a unique perspective to the role. His decision to visit Captain Traoré in Burkina Faso's capital marked a dramatic shift in ECOWAS's approach. Instead of continued isolation and sanctions, Bio chose engagement and dialogue. The symbolism was powerful, the chairman of ECOWAS sitting down with a leader his organization had been trying to isolate. During his visit, Bio made remarkable statements that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. "I am here today to show my solidarity with the people of Burkina Faso, to tell them they are not alone, and that we will work together to restore peace," he declared. This language of solidarity replaced previous rhetoric of condemnation. The discussions reportedly focused on regional security and international relations. Bio acknowledged what many had been saying privately, that isolating these countries hadn't improved security or restored democracy. Instead, it had potentially made both situations worse by cutting off channels for dialogue and cooperation. The security situation in Burkina Faso remains dire. Jihadist groups control significant portions of the country, and over 2 million people have been internally displaced. Bio's promise to make sure that peace returns to Burkina Faso represented a commitment to work with, rather than against, the current leadership. The visit has generated significant analysis from regional experts and international observers. Ulf Lersing from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation's Sahel program described the development as a clear signal of acceptance. They've accepted it now. There won't be any more talk from ECOWAS for the Sahel countries to come back, Lersing observed. This was the most optimistic, most upbeat comments from ECOWAS we've seen so far. This assessment suggests a fundamental shift in ECOWAS strategy. The contrast with previous ECOWAS positions is stark. For nearly 2 years, the organization had maintained that the military governments were illegitimate and must restore civilian rule. Sanctions were consistently renewed, and diplomatic pressure was maintained. Bio's visit effectively acknowledged that this approach had reached its limits. Some analysts see this as pragmatic recognition of reality. The AES countries weren't showing signs of returning to ECOWAS, and the continued standoff was harming regional integration without achieving its stated goals. Bio's engagement could be seen as choosing effectiveness over principle. However, critics argue that this approach legitimizes military coups and abandons ECOWAS's commitment to democratic governance. They worry that other military leaders in the region might interpret this as a signal that coups can ultimately be successful if leaders simply wait out international pressure. The broader implications of this diplomatic shift extend far beyond Burkina Faso. ECOWAS has been one of Africa's most successful regional organizations, facilitating free movement of people and goods, coordinating economic policies, and sometimes intervening in conflicts. The loss of 3 member states representing such a significant portion of the regional economy poses fundamental questions about the organization's future. Can ECOWAS maintain its relevance and effectiveness with this reduced membership? How will it adapt its institutions and policies? There are also practical considerations. Regional infrastructure projects, currency union discussions, and trade agreements all need to be reconsidered. The planned ECOWAS common currency, for instance, becomes much more complicated without 3 major economies participating. Bio's engagement approach might also influence how other regional and international actors deal with the AES countries. If ECOWAS is moving toward acceptance and cooperation, will the African Union, European Union, and other partners follow suit? Perhaps most importantly, there's the question of what this means for ordinary citizens. Young people in the Sahel who have known nothing but conflict and political instability are watching to see whether this new diplomatic approach can deliver the peace and development that previous strategies failed to achieve. Bio's visit to Burkina Faso represents a potential inflection point, but significant challenges remain. The security situation in the Sahel continues to deteriorate, with jihadist groups expanding their territorial control and influence. Humanitarian needs are overwhelming. Millions of people require food assistance, healthcare, and basic services. The international community's response has been complicated by the political situation, with some donors reducing aid due to the military governments. Humanitarian needs are overwhelming. Millions of people require food assistance, healthcare, and basic services. The international community's response has been complicated by the political situation, with some donors reducing aid due to the military governments. The success of Bio's new approach will ultimately be measured by concrete outcomes. Can engagement succeed where isolation failed? Will cooperation on security issues lead to improved stability? Can economic relationships be rebuilt and strengthened? For the people of Burkina Faso and the broader Sahel region, these aren't abstract diplomatic questions. They're matters of life and death, of hope and despair. Bio's willingness to extend a hand to Captain Traoré might represent the beginning of a new chapter in regional relations. President Bio's historic visit to Burkina Faso marks a significant shift in West African diplomacy. Whether this engagement approach proves more successful than previous isolation strategies remains to be seen. What's clear is that the old playbook wasn't working, and leaders like Bio are willing to try new approaches. As Bio stated after his meeting with Traoré, ECOWAS has always played a significant role in promoting peace, security, and economic prosperity across our nations. The question now is whether this new diplomatic direction can fulfill that promise and bring stability to one of the world's most troubled regions. The eyes of West Africa, and indeed the international community, will be watching closely to see whether engagement can succeed where confrontation failed.